Hi there, and welcome to The Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. And today we have a really simple, easy, full meal. They're called a 360 meal, meaning you have your starch, your protein, and your vegetable cooked all at the same time in the Ninja Foodi using any of the various features, whether it's pressure cooking or air crisping or baking or broiling, whatever. So one thing I want to say is that everybody asks for these types of recipes. And I just want to let you know, if you've tried some at home and they haven't worked, it's not you. They're hard to do. They take a lot of planning. You really have to think about each ingredient, how you can either change the size of it to make them all cook at the same time. So these are not easy meals to develop, but they're super easy to execute. So I'm going to show you how easy this one is, and then we're going to talk about some of the different things that you could put in place of, like, if you didn't like cabbage, what other types of vegetables you could use. So stick around for that, but right now let's get started making this barbecue chicken dinner. And the reason why I came up with these group of ingredients, you might think it's kind of odd, is because I was thinking about like a summer barbecue, and I wanted something that was like a coleslaw with a little tart. And then I wanted like the delicious barbecue chicken and also some potatoes. So I picked purple cabbage because it's gorgeous, but you can use regular green cabbage, no problem. All right, so what we want to do is get our cabbage cut up into small wedges. So to do that, I'm just going to take my knife. Now I've already cut this in half because it was a pretty large purple cabbage. So I cut it in half, actually more than half, probably 2/3. And it's about 2 pounds, so that's what I want. Now with the flat side down, I'm going to take my knife and just go straight down the center here. That way I'm going to expose that core because I want to get the core cut out. And the easiest way to do that is simply take your knife and go straight down. Perfect. Now this is going to be a pretty full pot. I'm going to go ahead and take this outer layer of the cabbage off because I see where some of it's wilted, and I don't want to put that in the pot. So I'm going to take that off. Then I'm going to cut this into about, I don't know, 6 to 8 little wedges. They're not going to be real thick because you want them maybe about 1 inch thick, because when you lay them on the bottom of the pot, we still need to get the rack in there. And if it's too high, we're going to kind of run out of room. So just put them in, because you want the bottom of the rack to be touching the bottom of the pan as much as you can. All right, so let's just do a couple more of these here. It's probably the worst way in the world that I could cut those, though. There we go. And I'm going to do the same. I'm going to try to go in between these two. I'm not doing this the best possible way, but there we go. So again, about 1/2 inch to 1 inch. And we're just going to lay those in the bottom. Now you don't even need to salt or pepper these. They take on the flavor of the vinegar and they taste absolutely amazing. So I'm going to do the same with the other wedge. This is the right way to cut it, guys. I don't know what I was thinking that last time. So look how easy that is. So I cut it correctly this time. The last time was a little cumbersome. Okay, so let's get these all in here. Okay, now that all the cabbage is in the pot, and it is a little high, so I'm gonna have to probably push down on the rack, but it will not make a difference because it doesn't matter if you smush the cabbage at all. It's not gonna make a difference at all. I'm gonna put in 1 cup of apple cider vinegar, and that is our thin liquid. So that's all we need to do there. So now let's get our barbecue chicken ready. You want to get an 8-inch by 2-inch Fat Daddy-O pan. Now you could use another type of pan, that's fine, but the 2-inch height is sort of important, or you're gonna run out of room unless you have the 8-quart. If you have the 8-quart, you can go with a 3-inch by 8-inch pan. And it doesn't matter for this what type of pan it is. It's not that important. So this recipe calls for about 1.5 pounds of boneless, skinless, frozen chicken thighs. And I get the question all the time, if I write a recipe that calls for frozen, people want to know, can they do it with fresh? If I write a recipe for fresh, people want to know if they can do it with frozen. So I thought today I will show you the differences in the outcome. So I've got my about 1 pound here of boneless, skinless, frozen thighs, and then I have 1 boneless, skinless thigh that is thawed. And so we're gonna put them in and we're gonna see what the difference is at the end. So then you can make a determination whether or not you wanna use the thawed or frozen. But the recipe will call for frozen because that worked best with the 10-minute pressure cook. All right, so I just have these frozen, and I usually individually freeze mine, so they're very easy to pop out of the bag. They don't stick together. So I urge that you do that if you're gonna be freezing meat. And the way I do it is just put the thawed, whatever it is, because you can do this with any kind of meat, on parchment, on some sort of a sheet tray, and pop it in the freezer till they're frozen, and then just put them into your freezer bags and seal them. Then you can just take 1 or 2 out. It works great. I do it with all types of meat because I buy them in bulk. All right, I'm just gonna kind of arrange this around a little bit. Now it's easier with the thawed chicken breast than it is with frozen, but we're gonna be just fine here. I don't want them to be overlapping, at least as much as I can. All right, now this one is the the thawed one. So we're gonna put that down in there at the bottom here. Then I'm gonna set this one right in there. All right, that looks good. So we've got our chicken breast in there. Now I'm just gonna do some salt and pepper. I'm not measuring this, probably maybe a 1/4 teaspoon. I'm just gonna salt and pepper the chicken, and then we're gonna put on our barbecue sauce. Now you can use any barbecue sauce you like, okay? So you can buy it from the store, no problems at all. But I made my own, and I made it in the new Ninja Foodi hot cold blender. It was done in 10 minutes. It was incredibly easy, and I'm gonna link to that video right there so you can check that out in case you wanna make your own. So I have here a 1/2 cup. This is actually still warm because we just filmed that video. This, like I said, 1/2 cup, 4 ounces, and I'm just gonna pour this over. Now you will want probably about 6 ounces total. We're gonna use this to cook the chicken breast, but then we're also going to baste some barbecue sauce and then broil it up at the end to really make this chicken delicious. All right, now this is a cover that I like to use. You can use foil, but if you wanted to pick these up, they are in my Amazon store, and I will link to that below. These are from Walfos, and they are just silicone covers. This one I cut to fit. So if you get this pack, it'll be, I think it's probably like 9 or 10 inches, and it just hit the rack wrong. So I went ahead and cut this so that it fits perfectly and will fit underneath the rack. Now we're gonna put this underneath the rack because we wanna do 3 levels of cooking. And in order to do that, we need to secure this pan to the bottom here. We'll put the rack in, and then we'll put our potatoes on top. And the best thing I found to do that are these little silicone bands. They're graffiti bands, and they are also in my Amazon store, and I will link to that below. So I like to take, there's a part here that's connected. I like to make sure that's on top. It just gives me a little bit more ability to adjust it so that it's balanced, right? And then I just slip this underneath the pan. Don't worry if the cover starts to come off because we can adjust all of that as we go. This pan can be a little bit difficult to deal, I mean, not the pan, the rack can be a little difficult to deal with. So we just sort of take it around like this until it's even, and then we will lift up these legs. And if one of your little things is not, it has to go under. I usually do this a lot easier. So this leg, there's a little part on the top, and that has to go under and fit on top of this purple thing. And then we're gonna go like this. And then this is what I'm talking about. Just sort of even it out so that you can get it to where it's sitting the way you want it to sit. And that looks good to me. I made that look a lot more difficult than it actually is, guys. It's pretty easy to do. And this is when you're gonna get a little creative because really need to nestle it down in there. So we're gonna take it in, put it around, And then I'm just gonna push it down. Even if I break that cabbage, it does not matter. I'm not scraping the bottom of the pot though. There we go. All right, that looks good. So it doesn't take too long. And now it's sitting on the bottom. So now we can put our potatoes on top. What I have here is about a pound or 4 medium-sized Yukon Gold. I like to use the Yukon Gold. You could use russet, but in 10 minutes, russets are going to become a lot softer than these. So I like to use the Yukon Gold. They hold their shape better. And I'm not even going to worry about peeling them, but I am going to get these little eyes off here. If you wanted to peel them, you certainly could, but I'm not going to worry about it. There's a lot of vitamins in the skin of a potato. They have been washed though. We are going under pressure for 10 minutes. So what I like to do is try to keep these potatoes kind of on the larger side. So you could do them in halves if you wanted to. You could do them in quarters. If you have those new potatoes, you could use those as well. That would work fine. And I might cut them in half. I might keep them whole. I'm not sure. I haven't worked with those too much. But these are nice, good sized chunks here. All right, now the last thing we're gonna do is just put a little bit of salt, and you can do pepper. You can even put some barbecue sauce on these if you want. I like mine with barbecue sauce at the end, but I use the barbecue sauce with the pan drippings from the chicken, and that's how I love to eat my potatoes when I do it this way. Now I'm not gonna worry about covering these. They don't need to be covered. It doesn't matter if moisture gets in or not. And we're gonna put on our lid. Now remember, when you have a full pot like this and you want to put your lid on and something is above where the liner of the inner pot goes, you want to make sure it's to the front, not towards the back. We don't want to impede any of these mechanisms back here that regulate the pressure and keep us safely pressure cooking. So then you just push down, and if for some reason you can't get your lid on, you just need to push that rack down a little bit more, or maybe move the cabbage out, or you could even chop up the cabbage into small pieces if you wanted to, but they are going to cook more and they're going to become a lot more tender. This is a really, I think, a nice consistency to the cabbage. It's not mushy, it's not real soft, but it's certainly not firm. So that's why I cut them like that, but it does make it a little more difficult to get that rack in. All right, so we're going to pressure cook. Time is 10 minutes. Hit start. It's going to take somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes to come up to pressure. That's just the way it is, because it is a full pot. So we're going to go to seal in the back here and just wait for it to come up to pressure. Cook for 10 minutes. Then we're going to do a 5-minute natural release. All right, so it took the pot about 15 minutes to come up to pressure, and then we went under pressure for 10 minutes on high, and now we've just finished our 5-minute natural release, so I'm going to go ahead and release the remaining pressure. All right, the red pin has dropped, meaning that we can open up our lid. Always do that away from you. We will open it up, and I will set it down over here. And then we'll get our potatoes out. It smells so good, especially if you like vinegar, because it does smell like vinegar, but it just smells so good. So I'm gonna get those out. Those are perfectly cooked. And now we're gonna go ahead and pull up our chicken. Oops, I'm grabbing some cabbage with it. That's okay, no big deal. There is a lot of water that collects right on the top of this. So try to be really careful when you're moving it around, because you don't want that water to fall on you. It is very, very hot. Now, I can't work with these, and my gloves are dirty, the ones that I really like to use. So I'm just gonna have to kind of let it cool down for a little bit. Meanwhile, I will stir this cabbage around. It looks absolutely perfect. And it smells amazing. And the purple cabbage is just so beautiful to use. All right, so this will cool down very, very, very fast. What I want to do here, though, is try to get this lid off without dumping water all over the place. But usually I end up dumping water on my cutting board. And that's okay. I'll just use my little rag here to kind of clean it off. I haven't found a really easy way to do this yet without dumping the water, because you don't want the water to go inside with your chicken. You don't want to dilute the barbecue flavor. So That's something I need to work on an easier way. Maybe you have a suggestion. I'm all ears. I always love suggestions. Okay, so now I'm just gonna take the graffiti band from around the legs of the rack and just move them there, and then the rack is gonna be released and the pan will sort of sit down on your cutting board. You can just pull these legs out. I'll flip that over. I'm gonna have to put it right there. And now we can lift this off. All right, looks perfect. Now, let me get a thermometer and let's do a temperature. I always recommend you do that. We are gonna put this back under the broiler for a little bit we're gonna brush it with some more sauce and we're gonna get it kind of broiled up a little bit. So if it's a little bit underdone, that is perfectly fine. And we are at about 135, so that's gonna be good. Yep, about 135. Now let's check that one that's down here that was thawed. That one is already at 192. So you can see that even though chicken thighs are very forgiving, so I don't think that's gonna be a problem at the end, I prefer doing it with the frozen chicken thighs. All right, looks so good. So now what we're gonna do is go ahead and get them broiled up. Now, if you wanted to, you could certainly put your potatoes in there too and broil those up. I'm not gonna worry about that right now. I'm just gonna get my chicken broiled up. That pan's still a little hot, so I'm gonna use my little things. And this rack is not the easiest rack to use all the time, so be careful because things love to fall off of it. Now I'm gonna put it back in. Now you can see I flipped it around. So I'm gonna put it back in and nestle it right on top. Now the cabbage is cooked, so we don't have any issues. It will go right in. And I'm gonna take some barbecue sauce that we made here. You could use as much or as little as you like. And I'm just gonna brush it on there. Pour it on and brush it on. And then we're gonna put the broil down, the air crisp lid down, and we're gonna broil for about 5 to 10 minutes until the chicken comes up to pressure. Leave the cabbage in the bottom, no problems. Oops, I'm going to broil. All right, there we go. We're gonna start it with 10 minutes and we may come back and I may stop it at 5, I may go the whole 10. It'll just depend on the chicken. So just check your temperature after 10 minutes. All right, so let's check out these potatoes. Let's see if there's anything we need to do to make those absolutely delicious. Move that over there. They are cooked perfectly, absolutely perfect. So I don't think there's a thing we need to do with those. But like I said, you could put them in the pan with the chicken and broil them up a little bit. But for me, they're gonna be just fine, just like that. All right, I'm gonna clean up here a little bit since I kind of spilled some cabbage, and we'll let this cook and we'll finish up, plate our meal, and enjoy our barbecue chicken dinner. All right, so earlier in the video, I said I was gonna go over some changes that you could make if you wanted to use different components in this 360 meal. And that's what I'm gonna do right now. So the cabbage takes about 10 minutes to cook. So let's say you wanted to cut out the cabbage and you wanted to exchange it for another vegetable. I would try to find a vegetable that cooks in a 10-minute pressure cook time, which would be something like a kale or a collard green. That would work perfectly with this, with or without vinegar. The vinegar doesn't make a difference. So if you didn't want to use vinegar, you could just use broth or water. That would be fine. You could season up your kale or collard greens any which way you like. However, if you wanted to try to use, like, let's say fresh broccoli, you're gonna run into trouble because broccoli will become complete mush in 10 minutes. So just keep those things in mind when you're choosing the components of your 360 meal. Now, let's say you wanted to change, you didn't want to do potatoes. You would need to find another starch that takes about 10 minutes to cook. I would say you could switch it out for rutabaga, which is a little bit more of, I mean, it's still considered a starch, but it's a root vegetable. And I know if people are doing low carb, that's a better alternative than potatoes sometimes. I'm trying to think what else you could do with a starch that takes 10 minutes. Brown rice takes about 30, so that's not gonna work for you. Neither will wild rice. White rice would become quite overdone in that amount of time. You might be able to get away with some pasta, but I think 10 minutes is going to be quite a bit for that as well. But you could also change things around by putting your potatoes in the bottom. Let's say you're going to do potatoes in the bottom and you wanted to do the chicken thighs and they were thawed. Now, if they're thawed, you could do maybe a 3 to 5 minute pressure cook time. Do frozen vegetables on the top instead of the potatoes. So potatoes in the bottom, then your chicken thighs with the barbecue sauce or whatever seasonings you want that are thawed. Not bone in though, because bone in is going to add time. So then your frozen vegetables on top, and you could go about 5 minutes and you should be just fine with that. So play around with it, experiment. They're not all going to be perfect the first time you try. They're not perfect for me the first time I try, but usually I can get a good combination, and you're going to be seeing more of these types of meals from me in the future. So I hope you enjoy them. All right, so it's been just about 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and give a little temp here. They are looking pretty good. They are almost there. So they're at 157. That one's at 154. All right, they're looking really good. So I'm just gonna keep this going. I'll probably go the full 10 minutes. Now, if you're worried about your potatoes cooling down too much, you can always just stick the silicone cover on top, and that will trap in the heat and keep them nice and warm until we're ready to plate up and serve. All right, so we finished 10 minutes of broiling. Oh, they look so good. And now I'm just gonna take a temp here. And we are at 165 and counting up, so we are perfectly cooked here. Remember, you can take meats out, like if chicken, you want it to be 165, you can take it out at 160. It will continue to rise in temperature about 5 minutes as it sits and rests. I always recommend letting any meats rest. Oops, I grabbed some cabbage again, for about 5 or 10 minutes before serving. That just keeps them nice and juicy. All right, so now I've got some cabbage on the cutting board. That won't cause any issues. I'll clean it up in a minute. All right, so now let's get this cabbage out. Now, if you wanted to, you could also brown up the cabbage if you wanted to. So if you wanted to put that air crisp lid back down, you could put your potatoes in now and do a 5 minute, broil while you're letting your chicken rest. But I don't think it's necessary. I'm just gonna go ahead and plate up, and we're gonna eat some of this deliciousness. I'm gonna grab a potato here, and I've got a little bit of cabbage. And then I'm gonna grab, what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna cut this in half actually, because what I wanna do is I wanna taste the one that we did from thawed, and also the one of the ones that we did from frozen. So I can tell you a little bit different of the texture. All right, let's grab this guy here. Oops, I'm messing up my pretty coating. Now, if you wanted to add more barbecue sauce, you certainly could. What I like to do though, let's see if I can get a spoon here, or even a little thing. What I like to do is get some of this juice, and I like to pour it over my potato. I just think that adds so much flavor. So that's my preferred way. All right, let's get the cabbage tasted. Now, when I tested this recipe, the cabbage was perfectly cooked, and it had this nice tang of vinegar that I absolutely love. So it's kind of like, it reminds me of a little bit of a coleslaw, like a vinegar-based coleslaw, but it's hot, obviously. That is so good. You do not need any salt or anything. Absolutely delicious. All right, the potatoes are perfectly cooked. So they still hold their shape, but they are perfectly cooked. Delicious. All right, let's see what this chicken did. This is the thawed one. So we know it is way done. It's like 190 degrees. Little tough, I think, but we'll see. Little stringy. So I do believe it's overcooked. Even though thighs are very, very forgiving, they can still get a little tough. It's not bad at all. Pretty good. All right, so let's see this one. That came apart a lot easier. wow. This one's much better. In fact, this one even has more flavor than this one, which I'm surprised. That's kind of shocking, but this one took on more of the salt, pepper, and barbecue flavor than the one that was thawed. And that's interesting to me. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe I just put more salt and pepper on that one. Really good. Delicious. Perfect 360-degree meal, they call it, and that is because it goes around in a circle, so you have your protein, your starch, and your vegetable all cooked in the Ninja Foodi at the same time. I hope you enjoy this recipe. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, you can do that right over there.